being a parent is a really hard job that is 24/7. And even though we have our co-parents to help us with the burden, I guess if you consider it a burden of parenting, some days, it still doesn't mean you still need to take care of yourself, making sure you are as healthy and you're taking breaks and you're resting and you're doing all the things to kind of help yourself so you can be the best version of a parent and co-parent that you can be too.
So what I'm taking from that is I have to go tell my husband that I can go do some self-care to take care of myself so I can be a better parent.
A licensed therapist said so.
That's right.
Kayla, I give you permission to say that.
Yeah. Can I get a prescription by chance? Or
exactly.
I can write you a note.
There you go.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
All right. Let's just run through out loud. Okay. All right. Welcome to The Village, the heartwarming and insightful podcast where two incredible moms come together to share their journey of navigating life, love, and the intricate art of blending families. Join us as we dive into the joys, challenges, and unique experiences that arise when two families become one. Hosted by Kayla,
that's me,
and hosted by Megan, that's me. The Village offers a genuine and relatable space where we share our personal stories, triumphs, and lessons learned on the path of creating our harmonious and loving blended family. Whether you're a stepmom, bonus mom, a birth mom, or simply someone interested in the beautiful chaos of family dynamics, this podcast is for you. Each episode is a heartfelt conversation that covers a wide range of topics, from the everyday moments that bring laughter and tears to the more complex discussions surrounding co-parenting, step-sibling relationships, and building a strong foundation of love and trust. We openly explore the challenges we've faced, the strategies we've employed, and the unexpected joys that have come our way. The Village isn't just about blending families. It's about the power of friendship, support, and sharing the journey with someone who understands. Tune in as we swap stories, offer practical advice, and invite experts to weigh in on subjects like effective communication, managing expectations, and nurturing connections in a modern blended family. Whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a sense of community, The Village is here to remind you that you're never alone on this incredible journey. Subscribe now to join our community of fellow moms and let's mom together through the ups and downs, creating a tapestry of love and unity one episode at a time. I mean, after all, it takes a village. Oh yeah, and by the way, her ex-husband is my current husband.
Hey everybody, this episode is going to be brought to you guys by our sponsor, Brooke Roden Realtor with Remy Realty, a Florida native who always puts her integrity before her commission.
Where can you find Brooke?
So you can find her at Brooke Roden Realtor. She's on Instagram and Facebook. She'll help you guys with all of your housing needs here in the Jacksonville market.
Wow, awesome. I can't wait to reach out to her.
So one more time, at Brooke Roden Realtor.
Awesome. So today's episode is going to be a fun one. It's a first for us.
Yep.
We have a special guest today, our very first guest.
Very first guest.
Yeah. Everyone say hi to Becky.
Hello. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you, Becky?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.
Absolutely.
We are absolutely thrilled that you have decided to come on today's episode. If we just kind of want to go into a background, they kind of know who we are.
Yep.
Why don't you just go ahead and give the world an introduction on who Becky is?
Yeah. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Florida. I've been in Jacksonville about 2.5 years now, going on 3, I think. And it's been a nice change from the cold Midwest of the Chicago area.
Oh,
and maybe
yeah.
one day I'll be reaching out to Brooke to buy some Jacksonville property.
Yes.
Great idea.
So I've been a social worker for about 12 years now. Majority of my career, I have been working with patients with chronic illness, specifically cancer, and their families. And so we see a lot of difficult relationships and how do we kind of manage that through the lens of illness, but also just how do we connect as humans. And so I think it's a beautiful and difficult job, but I do love it. I have a degree in child development and family studies. And so I feel like a lot of that background knowledge has kind of helped me as I have moved forward in my career. And I'm excited to talk to you a little bit more about managing family themes.
Yay. Well,
So,
for starters, thank you for doing what you do. I'm sure that is a challenging task. So again, we just appreciate you, and we're just going to bounce back and forth with some questions that we have for you.
beautiful.
And just kind of go from there. And we're excited to hear what you have to offer our listeners.
Yeah, let's do it.
What experiences do you have in your job, and maybe even outside of that, with co-parenting situations?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. So I spent many years in my career at my previous job working with pediatric patients who had brain tumors and also soft tissue cancers. So a saying that we all like to say is, the world doesn't stop when you or your child gets sick. All those stressors that were there before are still there, but they're amplified. So really, we see a lot of families having a lot of conflict, dysregulation, dysfunction, and so I kind of see them almost at their like worst nightmare.
Oh,
situation.
gosh.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been most of my experience in working with children in this aspect and working with families. Of course, I primarily work with adults now, but that family system is still really there. We still see a lot of sometimes conflict with that immediate family, and how do we manage that, even with our adult children, with our ex-partners, with our current partners. And so that's something that, is in my day-to-day work.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
So it's like co-parenting, but on the worst possible,
Yes.
Right.
like
Yeah.
spectrum of it. Yeah.
Oh, I've had parents call Child Protective Services on each other. I've had parents try to dictate medical care that
Oh,
we're
wow.
not, we've had to get, guardian ad litems and the judicial system involved. So I've seen like some of the more extreme stuff, I would say.
Yeah.
But
Oh my
I think
goodness.
it can all go back to some very similar roots or cores of why does conflict happen when you are dealing with co-parents, and the conflict that I had seen has just been amplified to the millionth degree.
Yeah. They're already in stressful situations, and it's just it's just amplified, like you said. So.
Yeah. And I think, one parent might have one thought on their child and what that might be that best interest, and then the other parent that's a whole different level that I could not fathom.
Yeah. And I think of like, if a parent's scared for their child, like they're going to be acting out of fear and emotion versus like being rational too in those situations. So
right. And so I think when we talk about co-parenting, it's really having that communication between mom and dad or whomever the parents are, and having those big values kind of ironed out as much as possible before crisis happens. Because when crisis happens, our whole system gets elevated. We're not thinking rationally. We're, as you guys said, reacting emotional. Kind of that reptile brain takes over the logical brain. And so it can make it hard to make sound, grounded decisions when we're feeling so elevated or triggered. So if we have discussions and open communication about what our values are, then sometimes that can help us prevent some of this conflict that may happen in the future, regardless if it's a medical conflict or something else.
Wow. Well, that's, a good start into our next question. Becky, generally speaking, how do you handle conflict?
I cry. No.
Same. Crying is an okay emotion.
It's not a bad one. No, I'm not here to shame the criers. I think as someone who has done this work for a long time, I feel like my empathy hat is pretty strong. So I always try to figure out, okay, why is there conflict here? Where are we missing each other's cues? Where is there a dysfunction or dysregulation between the two of us? So instead of trying to react emotionally, I try to react to the behaviors or try to understand where the behaviors are coming from, so then I can better empathize and react to that. It's not an easy skill. It's definitely one you have to practice.
Oh yeah,
we
for sure.
It's not in human nature to be able to kind of take that step back and really think about things, especially when we're heightened. So I think it's just something that comes with time and patience and practice. But that's kind of how I do it. And then as soon as I think I understand, I kind of reflect with that person. And then I probably go vent to my girlfriends about this
Yep.
person that I have
Over a bottle of
with.
wine.
Over a bottle of wine. Like, I can't
Yes.
believe they said this to me. But yeah, so I think for me, it's always trying to understand, why are they so angry? Why is this conflict happening? Because it's probably has nothing really to do with me.
Yeah.
At least in some of the work I do, it's really because they're mad at their situation. A lot of times it sucks and there's nothing we can do to fix it. So trying to understand that, I think, is helpful.
Wow, that's
Definitely.
That's a good one. Like,
Yeah.
I guess like taking a step back before reacting
Yeah.
can go both ways, like with the child and the parent and with both parents. Like, just honestly taking a step back, taking a look at the situation and maybe not so much the person.
Yeah.
And just trying to get a better understanding what's at hand.
Well, I think we kind of talked about this a little bit before, like the root of why people, react the way they do in those situations. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And especially I think if you're, looking at your child, many times our kids don't have the words to express the big feelings that they have. And so that's when we look at their behaviors. And so if the kids are acting out or having some behaviors, well, what's happening there? Is there something that they are dealing with or working through, or are they having a struggle of some sort? That's how they communicate to us, is through behaviors.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so in these situations when you're encountering co-parenting, what strategies do you use to help them create like a healthy relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something with co-parenting, it's really working on the skills for setting boundaries, having open communication, and just making sure that you are putting the child before yourself. I think the word boundaries gets tossed around a lot, but they're so important. What are your hard stops with something? What is acceptable and unacceptable for you? There's going to always be people that test those boundaries, but it's kind of having that authentic sense of yourself and your value system to be able to have those boundaries in place and work with people who are challenging those. Because unfortunately, not everyone respects our boundaries.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that can happen a lot in co-parenting relationships where there's testing of those boundaries. So just staying firm with those while still working in the best interest of your child. So that's kind of what my big one, I think, is boundaries. The other one is really effective communication skills. The biggest one is really doing some active listening. That's really giving your full attention to that other person, really focusing on what they're saying, and reflect and repeat back what they tell you to make sure you understand. A lot of times we're already formulating or planning our response to things that we're not actually listening.
Oh, yeah.
We want to be right. We want to win the argument. We want to make our point, but really you're not winning there.
No.
That's a valid. I have practiced that because I used to do a lot of listening to speak versus listening to actually listen to the other person. Yeah. I do that at
their side of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I, to the point, I want to win the argument. I want to be the right one, but sometimes it's okay to be wrong,
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you, to Becky's point there, if you actively listen, you might think, ooh, I am in the wrong here.
Well, and I think it might have been the last episode we talked about sometimes you do need to have a conversation and then separate and think about it and cool off. And then that way you can actually react appropriately versus off those emotions that were created.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's absolutely right. Because when we're angry, our brain isn't functioning normal. Just when we're anxious or depressed, the whole chemistry of our brain isn't functioning the way that we are used to it when we're in not times of stress. So if things are really getting difficult and heated, it is best just to step away, recollect yourself, give yourself some time, and then come back to the conversation and come from a place of those I statements, not you statements.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they always talk about, because you statements can be a little bit accusatory and can trigger a defensive response, where if you say, I feel like this versus you make me feel,
Yeah.
that can be a big way to help kind of communicate. But also, sometimes you just can't have that contact at that point, and it's okay to walk away. And again, keep your boundaries firm. If it's getting a little heated, if things are not going in a productive direction, it's okay to put your boundaries up and be like, you know what, this is as far as this conversation can go today. Let's revisit tomorrow with cooler heads.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny you say that. The other day, Lily, she said something and she was trying to converse with Landon, and she's like, I feel, and I was like, are we okay, Lily? Good job. Like, she was trying to express her feelings.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's a good point, because if you like come out with you, it seems like you're pointing a finger. You know what I mean? Versus just telling your point of view. Like, no matter their point of view, you feel the way you feel. So, So it's a very good point.
Yeah, I had this one couple I was doing some counseling with, and they would get into very heated arguments, and then they would just keep going and going. And they weren't even listening to their partner when they would say, you need to stop, So we're like, you know what you do? You just yell a safe word and you walk away.
Pineapple.
There's no SpongeBob, but yes.
Okay.
So
I mean, that works.
So they knew that someone was saying SpongeBob, that was going to hopefully trigger a response like, oh, we're taking this too far. Let's like separate and come together.
That's hysterical.
But sometimes that's what you need to do, is just step away.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Where are we?
We're fine.
Yep. Yeah. How do you address communication breakdowns?
Oh, yeah. So when it comes to communication breakdowns, I think it's always looking at, how are you communicating with somebody? Are your words matching your actions? Are your words even matching your tone? Because it can be like, yes, I'm so fine with that, but you're frowning, mad face. Like there's going to be, it's going to be off, And so I think it's, again, kind of going back to that active listening. Also really keeping the conversations kid focused. We all want to foster a healthy co-parenting relationship, but the conversation should really be kept on the kids. We don't always need to include everything, especially if we're at a point in our co-parenting relationship where we can't have that level of interaction. It's okay just to keep the conversation kid focused and set almost like a business tone, that you're going to just speak like neutrally with respect, and that your ex is like a business partner, or your co-parent's your business partner in raising your kids. I also think setting up time for regular communication to keep from breakdowns from happening is a really good idea, especially at the beginning of your co-parenting relationship, just so you guys stay on the same page. I think with time and as you get into the swing of things, although there's going to be shifts as the kids get older, things are going to change in their needs and wants, then that might need to change too. But I think having some of that good touch points where you're going to reserve this time of day every week to really talk about the kids and where they're at, I think that can help keep communication breakdowns from happening.
That's a really good point.
That, because I think even like Dan and I have had the discussion of like little things add up and then you don't realize they become a big thing. So making sure that you're every Wednesday we're going to have this conversation so that it doesn't.
And I think we unconsciously have those conversations at pickup drop-offs.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, hey, how was Landon this week? Or hey, I didn't do Lily's full turns for her mouth. You've got 5 more. Like just, we do that when we drop off.
Check-in.
Yeah. And I think it's really funny that you pointed out, Dan, we talked about this in one of our episodes, but Dan is just an emotional person. So to me, when Dan and I were together, I always thought Dan was yelling at me. And he wasn't. He was just saying, and I think that's one of those like cues that maybe I should be like, okay, I feel that you're yelling at me. Yeah. I wouldn't. I would just yell right back. And he's like, why are you yelling?
And then
you're
like, both yelling.
But you're yelling at me. Like, and
being
so
counterproductive instead of,
That's so
Yeah,
funny.
and it's all about learning your co-parent, your partner's communication style. You know, if someone is a little bit more of a loud talker or whatever, that doesn't mean that they're yelling at you. That's just how that's to them, that's normal. So it's also
Right.
kind of adjusting your communication style so that you both feel like you're being heard. So maybe you need to communicate to them in a certain way, but then they need to also collaborate with you and communicate back to you in a way that you can listen and hear.
That's awesome.
I like it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Your turn. You have a long one.
Yes, I do. What role do you see extended family playing in co-parenting? And then a secondary part is, how do you address potential conflicts with that extended family?
I think all extended families are a blessing and a curse at the same time. No.
I mean, a valid point. Yeah.
I love my extended family. I love my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. I loved my grandparents when they were with us, but it also sometimes can feel a little bit too many cooks in the kitchen sometimes, especially when you see a loved one, whether that be a son or a daughter or a grandchild or whomever, going through a separation and co-parenting. So I think it can be really hard sometimes, and you just want to advocate for your family, but that child and that partner or co-parent are still an extension
Your
of that
family.
family.
Yeah.
So I think that they are certainly helpful. I think that our extended family bring a wealth of knowledge and culture and wonderful experiences to help educate our children and be a hopefully reliable source of support for them. In an ideal world, at least. But I also think that sometimes you need to set those boundaries with those families, that you are the parent and that is their co-parent, your co-parent, and that they can have all of the opinions in the world, but it really comes down to your choices and what's best for your child. So they don't have to like what you decide to do in caring for your kid or how you manage your co-parenting relationship, but they have to respect that is your decision to make. And I think if we're feeling like that boundary is being violated, do we look at doing some hard pressed, okay, like if you violate this, then we're going to step back, because I need to protect my family unit here, or in some situation like that. So I think that, as I said, I think there's a lot of positive things about extended families, but I also think that sometimes it can feel like situations can be overstepped. And I think that's when you need to really kind of work in your co-parenting relationship as to what's acceptable and what's not, and what you feel comfortable with folks inputting on, what you don't. And again, just putting your child forward first.
That's a good one.
I love that, because I think that people forget, even though you guys, like we've talked about this before, even though mom and dad or who, they split up, it's not you against them.
Right.
You know what I mean? That those people and that child are still one family. So remembering that, I think, is like a super important piece of it.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. Are there any books or resources that you would recommend for our audience?
Absolutely. So there's a few. So there's a couple books for parents, co-parents, I think are really great. And then there's a book about boundaries too, I'm going to do a shout out for. So I was just looking because I was like, where did I put my copy? It's all the way on my bookshelf. So I'll just tell you about it. So the first book I would recommend is called Mom's House, Dad's House, Making Two Homes for Your Child. And I think that really, it's by Dr. Isolini. I'm probably butchering that, but Ricci. And what's really great about this book, but it talks about how can you work as co-parents to set up like a comfortable home environment at each house, at mom's house and dad's house, and help the child get used to the idea of having two homes. So that's a really highly recommended book. Another one is Mindful Co-Parenting, A Child-Friendly Path Through Divorce by Jeremy Geis and James Morris. What I like about that book is it's the mindful co-parenting. So it's taking some of those words that we hear a lot about, mindfulness, self-care, but putting it in a co-parenting perspective. And I think that's super interesting and great.
Very cool.
Another one that I like is, as we know, co-parenting is not without its difficulties, sometimes with personalities.
Absolutely.
So Joint Custody with a Jerk Raising a Child with an Uncooperative Ex by Julie Ross and Judy Corcoran is an excellent read as well. Because sometimes there's a lot of hurt in those co-parenting relationships. There can be some trauma. And so it can be really hard to get to a point where if your co-parent isn't coming fully to the table as you would like them to, how do we navigate that? And how do we try to improve that relationship so that the child is having the best parenting experience that they can have? So I know hopefully that's not many people are experiencing that, but we know it happens.
It does happen. And I'm glad you recommended that book because Megan and I, we talk about successful co-parenting, but then there are just those situations that aren't successful, and how do you get by with those? And so I think that's a great recommendation. So thank you, Becky.
Yeah. Because not everybody can, like we talked about last episode, I think like it takes all four of us to be cooperative and work together, and not everybody's going to have 4 cooperative people or 2 cooperative people,
right?
Even that. So
right. Yeah. Hopefully it gives some tools or suggestions so that you guys can get to, or folks can get to a point where that uncooperativeness or the conflict has lessened. I think with any kind of change or transition, we always see the highest amount of conflict, anxiety, difficultness is always at the beginning where you're just learning how to navigate through things. And so maybe we need some more support up front, but then as time and as you get used to things and hopefully things calm down a little bit, hopefully that makes things a little bit easier. You wouldn't need a book like that as much. The final co-parenting book I'm going to recommend is called the Co-Parenting Handbook, Raising Well-Adjusted and Resilient Kids from Little Ones to Young Adults Through Divorce or Separation by Karen Bonnell. What I like about this book is it goes through kind of the whole lifespan of how do we support kids in a co-parenting fashion. And so I like, because I think a lot of times things get really focused on the littles, and totally understandable. Because that's a really hard age. They're understanding where they're at developmentally and cognitively. They're not going to understand why mom and dad are no longer together or why mom and mom aren't or whomever. And so I understand why there's a lot geared to that. But it can be just as hard on our older kids too. And even some of our adults. I've worked with some adults whose parents have gone through divorce, and it's traumatizing to them. And I'm have to have my empathy hat back on because I'm like, you're an adult, But that doesn't mean, because it means a whole change in your relationships. And that can be really hard to comprehend no matter what age you are.
That's a great one.
And my parents split up actually when I was an adult. So I was 30 and my parents split up, and I've had the thought process of like, I wish I could be inside the kid's brain and have my thoughts at the same time to see how they compare.
Right.
Like, is it easier at one stage or another? Because I think as an adult, like you never really expect it, I guess. And I guess as a kid, you don't either, but it's weird. It's a weird dynamic.
Yeah. I feel like it's more common when you're a kid to hear of other people's parents also going through divorce. But I think when you hear as an adult of your parents going through divorce, it's like, well, you already made it 30 odd years. Like,
what are you doing?
Why now? So I feel like that population still needs just as much support, because it also leaves you feeling like, well, what happens now? What about me? Feel your mom and dad, no matter how old they are.
And I feel like as a kid, like us particularly, like we wanted to make sure the kids adjusted easily, and we were nice to each other, and we make sure we co-parent, we do things together. Like my parents' kids are now adults, and so they're kind of like, you'll be fine.
Figure it out.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just a totally different dynamic. And I guess I just never thought about there being other adults out there who have like experienced it. Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy.
Very interesting.
Is it my
I do want to mention
I have one more book recommendation.
One more book?
Okay.
Sorry. And it's about boundaries, because I feel like boundaries are always, again, it's a word that we like to throw around a lot.
Yes.
And so really understanding and setting boundaries, I think are super important, especially when you're navigating co-parenting relationships as well as co-parenting with extended family. Nedra Glover Tawwab, I probably butchered her name too. It's Set Boundaries, Find Peace. Cannot recommend this book enough. When I'm doing private practice work, this is one of the first books I recommend if someone's really struggling with relationship issues. She goes through co-parenting, romantic partnerships, workplace, other family relationships. So I just think it's an excellent read if you're struggling on how to set boundaries. She gives some really good practical advice on how to do that.
I had to check that out myself.
Right? Well, and I was going to say, I'd like to connect all of our listeners to these books. If Becky, you think you could send us like links and we could share them in the description for everybody?
Yeah, we'll definitely share that.
That'll be easier, just Amazon or whatever for them to just be able to search it.
That's super cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll send you the links to those books.
Awesome. Thank you. If there is one piece of, I almost forgot words too. If there is one piece of co-parenting advice that you could leave our audience with, what would it be?
Oh, one of them? Okay.
One.
I had written out a couple.
I mean, okay. So I guess if you had to pick one, like what would be the most important? And then feel free to give extra.
Okay. My top 2.
Okay.
Here we go. We like that.
Children's needs come first. Kids come first. I think sometimes there can be feelings of power struggle in some co-parenting relationships that need to be worked through. But I think as long as we're always kind of working in the needs of the child first, it will help you be a successful co-parent or have more successful communication, hopefully. And also, I think it's really important to have empathy. And as we talked about earlier, separate the feelings from the behaviors. And so trying to understand where your co-parent is coming from, if they're struggling with the relationship or struggling with you, then trying to have some empathy. So that's what I would kind of say are probably some big ones outside of what we've already talked about, which is also very important.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. So Becky, how can you let people know? That's not worded the way that was supposed to be worded. Can you let people know how that they can connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn as Becky Ness, Ness, or if you're interested in doing any kind of counseling with me, I'm on the BetterHelp platform for private practice, and you can find me as Rebecca Ness on that one, and I see clients throughout all of Florida.
Oh, that's so awesome. We were talking about BetterHelp the
We
other day.
We were.
Yeah.
BetterHelp.
Cool.
Listen up.
Yeah. BetterHelp. Listen up.
Get a discount code. No.
Right.
That's what we're saying.
Maybe we could do like a joint venture discount code.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, Becky, I know we've sent you questions. Is there anything throughout any of your research that there's just like that additional recommendation that maybe we didn't think to ask that you've come across in your lifespan of counseling that would benefit any of our listeners?
I don't think so. I think you guys had some really great kind of very large questions that could really just be expanded upon individually kind of throughout. I think when it comes to how do we resolve conflict with our co-parents, I think it's really trying to let go of that anger, right? And also kind of accepting what you can and can't control. You can't control your co-parent. You can only control how you respond to them. So that might change the way how you respond to conflict. And so I think that's something else to kind of, when we're talking about what are the main causes of conflict? How do we resolve that? Resolving conflict, maybe just focusing on yourself and your own responses to things. And something that we can never highlight enough is just to take care of yourself. Make sure, being a parent is a really hard job that is 24/7. And even though we have our co-parents to help us with the burden, I guess if you consider it a burden of parenting, some days, it still doesn't mean you still need to take care of yourself, making sure you are as healthy and you're taking breaks and you're resting and you're doing all the things to kind of help yourself so you can be the best version of a parent and co-parent that you can be too.
So what I'm taking from that is I have to go tell my husband that I can go do some self-care to take care of myself so I can be a better parent.
A licensed therapist said so.
That's right.
Kayla, I give you permission to say that.
Can I get a prescription by chance? Or
exactly.
I can write you a note.
There you go.
We'll take it. We'll take it. Well, Becky, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts from taking your time out of your busy day. We were talking when this first got started on how crazy this week has been. Yes. And so I truly, truly, from the bottom of Megan, David, and I's hearts, just thank you so much for taking the time to just share your input and your advice for our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And, if there's anything else that you want to collaborate with, just let me know.
For sure. So just as a reminder to our listeners, you can find Becky on LinkedIn, Becky Ness, Ness.
Yep.
And then on BetterHelp, Rebecca Ness, for any of your private practice therapy needs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as a reminder for all of our listeners in the Jacksonville area, if you're looking for a house, follow up with our girl, Brooke Roden, Realtor, on Instagram and Facebook. She'll be here for you guys with all of your housing needs.
Yes. So thank you all for joining. We can't wait to see you guys again in 2 weeks. We've got some fun stuff for February. I'm
Valentine's
excited.
is coming up, so we have something fun for that. And then honestly, Becky, I think in the future, maybe we've talked about doing more like communication conversations.
Yeah.
So that might be something that you could help us out with.
Absolutely. And if
That'd
you
be
want to
so
do like I mean, this is not co-parenting, but if you want to do like a February intimacy issue for Valentine's.
That's a good point. Good
you
point.
let me know.
I like
it's
it.
not a it's a little
like
off.
it.
Yeah.
No, it's not off. No.
We've talked
Okay.
about maybe branching out a little bit, just
Okay.
like communication and relationships,
parenting
women, motherhood.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good
Yeah.
idea, actually.
Yeah, because I mean, Heather and I talk a lot about getting like your intimacy back. So
Yeah,
that
baby.
can be something that
Bound
can
chicka wow
contribute.
wow.
A lot of people, post babies, being moms, being busy,
Yeah.
parents. So just
No,
throwing
that's
it
a
out
great
there.
idea.
No, we'll definitely
We'll-
stay in touch.
we'll
I
be in
think
touch.
that's a great idea.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, really, Becky. I know
Thank
it's late in the
you.
evening and it's been a crazy week. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Of course. Good
Yay.
night.
Thanks,
night.
Becky. Good night.
Bye.
Well, that was so much fun.
That was really fun. I honestly feel like it gave, I know this sounds crazy, but it gave me so much like satisfaction. The things that she mentioned were like,
It was
points
validating.
Were very validating. Very validating.
I agree.
It was really awesome. I really enjoyed it.
Well, and I think it was nice to get her standpoint. Just I know we always say we're not therapists, we're not
We got one.
clinicians. We got one for you guys to kind of just give that input. And I think it was great. It was just nice to kind of hear that, we're doing the right thing, and hopefully we can encourage you all to just continue to do the right thing. I think Becky dropped some amazing books that I personally will probably read about 2 of those myself. I'm in a whole book reading thing in 2024, so I think that'd be so much fun to just kind of dive in and
even where we are in our relationship and our co-parenting, like talking about the kids getting older and how to continue to help them, like that's something we don't know how to do.
I don't want the kids to get older.
It's depressing.
I know. So, but yeah, we've got stuff lined up for February. We can't wait to share what we have in store. We hope that you guys enjoyed Becky just as much as we did. I think she's got some good points for some future episodes.
She does. And I think that like now that you guys know we have access to her maybe in the future, if y'all have questions you want answered by Becky, maybe shoot them our way. We can see if it's something, maybe we could do a Q&A with Becky one day. And then also Valentine's Day is coming up. So if you have intimacy things you want to talk about, let us know.
That'd be fun.
That'd be really fun.
Well, don't forget, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, the YouTubes, Apple, all of
Podcasts.
those. Yep, we've gotten a few extra followers since our last episode, which is so nice to see. So we just hope that number keeps rising, and we can't wait to see you guys again in 2 weeks.
Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you soon.
I want to do something with these things because I feel like I'm playing Fortnite.
Do you?
Like,
What did I say? I don't know.
what do you say like when you die, or like?
Finish it.
I
I don't know what the boys say.
I'm dropping in, boys. We're dropping out, girls and boys.
Out. There you go.
That's all I got. That was my best Fortnite attempt.
Peace out.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.